Okay. Welcome to 2030. So I would like to just go over some administrative issues, going over the course syllabus. Hopefully within 20 minutes, we can start our week 1 materials. Okay? Yeah, you may have many questions, but just interrupt me if you want to. Okay? Okay, most of you know about me, so just call me Jackie if you prefer. Okay? And my office is 2043 La Salle building. Okay, 2nd floor, and my office hour for this semester will be 4 to 6 p.m., Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. If you really cannot make it to any of those hours, just send me an email, okay? I would suggest really talk to me as early as possible. Please do not only talk to me when you feel that you're not doing so great in the course, right? Just talk to me as early as possible. Okay, and as usual, if you got any suggestion for improving the course materials, by the way, I try to record every lecture for you to reiterate, but one thing I would like to emphasize, that shouldn't be a substitute for coming to the lectures. I do want to see everybody, okay? Okay, so now course information, that's important, okay? It could be a little bit confusing, but let me try to clarify. So there are actually 2 Moodle sites, 2. To get to the one, you should just log into your Moodle site using this link over here. I wouldn't try it today because Moodle is incredibly slow for the day. Let's not waste our time. I'll just tell you, it's very easy to recognize the difference. Okay, so first of all, there will be a Moodle site, the title is like that, EECS2030B, which is this section here. So I will make announcement for section B only from this Moodle site. Most likely, maybe I would say, maybe the lecture materials are available, you should check it, only for section B. And there will be a forum that'll be moderated by myself, like in 1022. So if you want to post questions, post it here. If you post to the general Moodle site, nobody will care, all right? So please post to this section B, okay? Okay, again, please never share solutions with, for the labs or any other graded work on the forum. That's the only rule. Otherwise, you can ask anything related to the course. Okay, the other Moodle site is, basically you can see from the title, it's actually a merge Moodle site for section A, B, and E from the other 2 sections. So this section here is mainly for you to look for lab instructions. For example, if you go to this merged Moodle site here, you will see that lab 0 is already available. It will be due, I believe, next Friday. Okay, I'll go over lab 0 in just a moment. Okay, that's something you must complete in the La Salle building 1006, which is where you should go for the lab session, okay? So these are the 2 Moodle sites. And as I said, this site shouldn't be so strange to you if you took 1022 with me. You can just go to my website, and then this one should be quite fast. Let me try. If I click on that, and then you should go to the, okay? So that's kind of the, sorry, let me just do it again. So that would be the site for 2030 this semester here. There are certain background studies here. So these are simply optional. But I suggest maybe just ask yourself in the week 1. This is really the golden opportunity for you to pick up anything you don't think you learned so well and to review from 1022. Okay? Especially if you missed the remediation period, right? Maybe it has been a while since you touched this concept. So I just included the slides over here. If you really want to revisit some lectures there back in 1022, feel free to go there. Everything's there, okay? But if you want to talk to me in person, want me to explain the slides, again, drop by my office hour. And there will be only one tutorial for now. I want you guys to try GitHub. Maybe most of you have heard about it. It's a very standard way nowadays to manage your software projects. However, there's one thing I want to emphasize here, which is also emphasized in the tutorial. If you simply get a GitHub account by default, everything is public. And that is not the place you're supposed to store your lab work. That's considered as plagiarism or cheating. So what you should do is follow the tutorial video there. It shows you how you can apply an educational account for free. It only takes a few minutes, up to a day, to get an educational account. Do that as soon as you can, and then you can store all your lab work in the private repositories in the educational account, okay? So far, this tutorial series is only about 3 videos, very short. I'll try to give you more to follow, how you can check in project, check out project, commit, etc. Just make it useful for you. So you can apply that beyond this course. Okay, so usually you can just find out recording, topics, iPad notes, source code, etc. Everything the same as before, okay? Just being consistent. Okay, let me just go back to the slides. Okay, I would say this is really the main thing you want to focus on, because any preparation materials I give to you for lab test, which I will emphasize, they will be posted there, okay? So just only go to the Moodle sites when you need the lab instructions or check the announcement, okay? That will be the general principle. Okay, and check your emails regularly, please, okay? Okay, class protocol. You guys are being very polite right now, but I do want to say, please, no talking and no mobile, okay? If you really, really have to use it or feel like talking mobile, please do it outside. It's actually respectful for everybody, okay? Guys, can you grab a seat? Yeah, just anywhere. Okay. Okay, in class, since now we got a much smaller class, it's much more pleasant compared with the lecture hall A. So if you got questions, feel free to interrupt me. Okay, sometimes I might go fast. You can slow me down by asking questions. Okay, so study tips. Each lecture will be recorded entirely, as I said. So it's not meant to be replacing a lecture, but sometimes if you really have some legitimate reason to missing the class, that's okay. You can just catch up. But I would say you still want to come. Sometimes when you got a peer pressure, you can learn better, right? Just come with your classmates together. Okay, just when you come, don't worry about taking notes because everything I write on the iPad is going to be available to you. Don't worry about it. Just focus on understand as much as possible. If you really want me to reiterate something in the class, just ask, okay? Okay, sometimes if you really want to take notes, don't worry if that's incomplete. Just show it to me. I can tell you what you're supposed to write, you know? Okay, just a little bit general tips about CS. I was hoping that I can give you guys these tips back in the winter, but let's try. This is only my personal opinions. It does not apply maybe for other professors, just my personal experience. Okay, first of all, to do well in CS, inspiration is more important than perspiration. Which means sometimes you might be quite satisfied with your hard work. I would say hard work is very important because with no hard work, there's no way you can succeed. However, you want to be careful. For example, one of the complaints I got from 1022 was the tutorial videos is way too long. It's sometimes maybe repeating itself, but you know, this is my response. I would say when you're trying to watch the video, of course you spend the time, but I want you to stay more on top of what's being taught. You want to connect things together. When they talk about loops, when they talk about classes and objects, or when we talk about other more advanced concepts in the course later the semester, you want to always stay on top. So don't just be so obsessed about how many hours you have already spent. Focus more on what outcomes you have got. If you spend so many hours but you still haven't got anything understood, you should talk to me as early as possible. Okay? So it's really important because sometimes I got many students talking to me saying, I spent so much time on the course, but I still couldn't do very well, maybe in the exam or in the test. But I do appreciate your hard work, but maybe talk to me when you are not too sure if you're studying on the right direction. That's really important. Okay? That would be my advice. Okay, so don't be too satisfied if you just work hard. You want to work on the right direction. So now, this is my number one tip. You always want to ask yourself where you are from the bird's eye view, where you are. Especially we're going to talk about many advanced concepts in this course, starting from week number 2. Week 1 will mainly be just some review of classes and objects for 1022, just for you to catch up. But starting from week 2, we'll talk about many advanced concepts. So always stay on top. Okay, always want to go beyond the notes and what I said in the class. For example, I think I recommended this website to you guys called Coding Bet. So that's basically got lots of exercises and they got something for you to try at least. And if you know more resources, you should let me know later. Yeah, okay. Okay, and then always be curious about, don't accept everything I say in the class. If you are curious about why things work in a particular way, you should always try to explain to yourself. If you cannot, come to me or talk to your colleagues. Okay, okay, always reflect on how things are connected. So these are my tips, okay? They're very vague and very abstract. It's really hard to really give you very concrete, constructive feedback. But, you know, we'll talk, okay? It just gives you something to think about. Okay, there will still be lab tests. For those of you who took 1022 with me, you know that my #1 philosophy is if you submit code, they better compile, right? Otherwise, we cannot run it. Okay? You know, how about this? I will save the details for the lab test to a little bit later. I'll give you, as usual, lab preparation guide when we get closer to the time. For 2030, there'll be no tablets, no Android Studio. We use something that, in some way, I know what many of the complaint was, Android Studio doesn't really work sometimes, right? So, okay, for lab tests, I'll go over syllabus and tell you how many lab tests we have and their dates, if they're fixed. So you can start preparing already. But I would say the best way for you to prepare the lab test, any programming exercises I assign to you, at least do them for a few times. Make sure you're familiar with everything there. And remember that you also got time constraint in the lab test. You want to make sure you really understand everything that's going on. Okay? But I'll give you more tips later. But today just a very general guidance. Okay, academic integrity. So this slide, I don't need to waste my time. Basically, anything that's to be graded, you're not supposed to collaborate. That's a general principle. And especially for GitHub. So there'll be no excuse if for some reason you fail to actually apply for educational account and you store your lab submission on the web in a public domain. There'll be no excuse. Okay? So please be careful. If you're not too sure, if you really got the private repository, just come to me and I can check for you. Okay? It's really important. Okay? And I'll leave the reading for you. I don't need to go over that. Okay, course syllabus. It's on the Moodle side for section B. Okay, it's a section B website. You can check it maybe later. Since it's very slow today, so I will just go to the local copy on my computer. I'll show it to you. Let's go over that very quickly. Okay. Okay, syllabus for 2030. Okay, let me just make it wider. Okay, let's go over that. Okay, so my contact information here. So unlike 1022, if you got any inquiries about the course, just send to my department email, okay, anytime. And my office hour, the same. And course description, you can read it. And as usual, the course learning outcomes may not make so much sense in the very beginning of the course. So I'll rather skip them for now, but we'll gradually ask you to maybe review the course learning outcomes a little bit later. Oh, just something to note. So Professor Ma from section E, so we decided that we are going to get rid of some topics from the CLO, the course learning outcomes, and we're going to put more in-depth explanation to other topics. So that's not something you should worry about. Okay, I'm just saying some course learning outcomes here may not apply anymore for this semester because we thought it'd be nicer to let you learn other topics a little bit later in your study. Okay, so we got lectures, we got labs. Okay, for the lab session, you can see that unlike back in 1022, we got so many lab sessions there. We only got 2. So the 2 lab sessions there will be both take place in 1006. So you can check your time. Myself, I will try to be there for every lab, at least for the first hour, to see if you got any questions. So I would say that might be another alternative if you cannot make it to my office hour. Just go to lab. If you see me, just talk to me. It doesn't have to be about the lab submissions or lab solution. Maybe just about any general question about the course materials. You can also find me there and talk to me. Okay? So that'll be another good venue. Okay, for any one of you who wants to switch the lab session, I'm the worst person to talk to because I don't have any control over that. So talk to our program assistant in La Somme building 1012M. Okay, that's kind of the window there. Just talk to him. So the Sam over there will help you with the swap if he can do it. Okay, attendance. Again, I don't take attendance for labs. I don't take attendance for lectures, but I wish everybody can come. You know, just ask questions and learn. Okay, for lab test, I will talk more about its requirements a little bit later. But you can expect something similar to what you were expected in 1022. And guys, remember, now you're in second year, right? So hopefully that can give you a little bit more pressure. Hopefully no strike, yes. You know, this is so-called a York Cup. So it's not going to happen again until maybe 2 or 3 years later. But we'll see. Anyway, so my advice, graduate as soon as you can. Right? Okay, grading scheme. Okay, there will be 10 lab submissions. I can tell you that in general, the lab submissions are very straightforward. You just have to follow lab 0 very carefully, very closely, because the way we submit is totally different from how we did for 1022. You have to make sure, let's say if the due date, I'll just make one example. For lab 0, the due date will be next Friday, 11:59 p.m. That means you must hit the submit button from command line, and by that time, make sure it's submitted. Otherwise, once you pass the due date, the submission site will be closed. Okay, it will be considered late, penalty. And then, of course, we might take some penalty on your lab submission, but you really should get these 10%. Okay, the lab assignments I will be coordinating with the Professor Ma from Section E. I'll be responsible for about 4 lab sessions, and he'll be responsible for maybe about 3, okay, roughly. Okay, but anyway, you can always ask me about the lab. Okay, there will be 2 lab tests. I will talk about when they will be, okay, in just a moment. The first one will be 20%. However, I would suggest focus more on this 20%. That one will be just mainly about classes and objects. Quite a bit of that will be what you learn from 1022. I will also give you some more exercise to do, okay? And then the other 2 lab tests will be 15%, and the exam will be 40%. And I can tell you that mostly will be multiple choice, mostly. But you might be happy to know that most likely we might have maybe a common exam between the 3 sections. So I may not be in full control of the multiple choice. You might be happy to hear that. But we'll see. Maybe good, maybe bad, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so that letter grade, you can read it. Okay, just very standard, nothing surprising here. Let's just go over very quickly about the important dates with you. Okay. So now, when you download the syllabus, I will show you how you read it. Maybe a little bit different from how we read the syllabus for 1022. So you can see that it's kind of weird. You can see for week number 1, it's actually Wednesday as the first day, and then Monday, right? Wednesday, Monday, Wednesday, Monday. You will go back to the normal Monday, Wednesday after the reading week. That's how you read it. And lab 0, the green one means the lab is released on that particular lab session, which means you should go to that lab session there and try to complete your lab, or at least try to complete most of it. Lab 0 will be there, and lab 1 will be next week, will be basically released on Monday, September 17th, or maybe slightly earlier. That's kind of the timing. And the due dates will be specified usually in the lab instructions, so it's not on the syllabus. Okay, about the lab test. Your first lab test will be October 1st. It will take place in 1006, just where you usually go for the labs. Okay, I'll talk more about it, but you can imagine that lab test 1 is going to cover, I'll confirm with you, but tentatively, it's going to cover everything until September 24th. Okay? I also try to give you study guidance earlier, so you can start preparing. Okay, and also we got reading week, and after that, we also get lab test 2. Lab test 2 will be October 29th, also is a Monday. It always takes place on Monday, okay? And lab test number 3 will be November 26th. Okay, so these are fixed dates, they won't change, okay? If you really got anything you think I should really know about for accommodation, please let me know, okay? As usual. Let's see, after this, but the topics over there, they're pretty much tentative. So sometimes I might go behind the lecture, behind the topic. Sometimes I might go ahead. So we are flexible. Okay, any question about the syllabus before I move on? Yes? You said there's 10 labs, but I only see 7. Oh, no. Okay, good question. So the 10 you see over there, let me be more precise over here. Sorry, it's kind of slow, isn't it? Oops, but you saw, okay, let me just mention that. So lab submission is 10%, which means in total, you will get 10% from your lab submission. There will be 7 labs, okay, which means some lab might be worth 1%, some lab might be worth 2%, but we'll be more precise later, okay, but 10% you will get from the labs, okay? It's not like we got 10 labs, no, okay. Okay, any question about syllabus before I move on? Anything? Okay, very good. Okay, let's just go back there, and then let's go back to the slides to see anything else to say. Okay, lab sessions. Lab 0 has been on the merge Moodle, the course Moodle, the merge one, for all the 3 sections. Check that, and that's the due dates, okay? Okay, you must do it in Lausanne Building 1006. I would suggest whenever you do your labs, you want to do in 1006. The reason being, when you take your lab test, it will also be in 1006. So you want to get familiar with the Eclipse, over there. Okay, so that would be my advice. Okay, submission must be completed using the new mechanism. So I'll leave that to you to get used to. Yes.
For those of us not enrolled in the class, could you manually route us to the MOOC?
Okay, just for those of you who actually attended a lecture but not enrolled yet, yes, just talk to me after class. The best I can do, I can temporarily enroll you manually into the Moodle site so you can still get all the information. But I would say for section B, since I record everything, it's on my website, so you can also check it without my permission, right? Yeah. I just checked the registration number, it's about 122. I think we can go up to 144, so you may want to try. Okay. Yeah, maybe try it a bit later. Yeah. Okay, so I'll be in the lab session, so you can ask me questions as always. Okay, let me just give you a little bit mindset change over here. Adapting yourself to the second year. So we have fun in the first year, somehow, right? You know what, it's interesting. When I taught 2030 last year, that's when I first started this position here at York. So I didn't teach 1022 at that time. So when I said we had fun, I'm not too sure what the fun was. But now I can say that we did have fun, right? I would say both in the tablets and maybe lab tests a little bit. Yeah, maybe. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, you don't have to answer. Okay, let me tell you the fundamental difference when we move to second year. Okay, let's clarify the mindset. Okay, so first of all, when you were back in 1022, basically whenever you're trying to develop your programs, you can always see the effects on tablets. It's called visualization, a little bit more academic, which means you can always visualize what's been there, right? However, that's not really the way to go when you actually, unless you're an Android app developer. Right? If you're an other software developer in general, that's not the way you should be trained. But for first year, we thought engagement is very important. That's why we use Android tablets. But first year is over. Okay? So now, but I think one thing you were actually depicted that was worth doing as a training was, remember in 1022, you did tester, like a tester class with the main method with lots of manipulation of object. That's something you want to memorize in your mind, that is actually something useful. However, the tester that we use in 2022 is still not ideal. We'll actually move that into something called JUnits for you in this course. That'll be taught in about second week or third week. Okay, that's something very similar to tester, but I will motivate why we want to move again. But tester is a good thing that we did in 1022. Okay, software in reality, this is what you are supposed to do. Usually, if you're given a programming problems, you may not get a YouTube video to show you how the app should work. The customer may not be so kind, not as kind as I am, right? And what they will usually give to you, maybe just a few use cases, and then just give you the signatures or API of the method, and that's it. And you're supposed to figure out exactly how the method should work. A little bit like your lab test too, okay? When you're given methods, and that give you some English description about how they should be used and some example, and you're gonna program that. Assume that in 2030, that's kind of the ground that we're starting, okay? No tablets, no more tablets. Okay, so now here's the thing I would like to remark. So now when you're escaping from the first year, so you want to be able to think more abstractly, not just for 2030. Later on, if you move to maybe 3311 for software design, that requires even more about thinking abstractly. You don't want visualization to be always something you can rely on. You want something more abstract. You want to be more independent. For your interest, I'm not going to play this video in the class. That's just one example. You know how do you do interview at Google? What they do is they give you a problem there. For example, develop, let's say, rock, paper, scissors game, right? They wouldn't want you to develop an app and show it on the tablets. What they want you to do is program that on a blackboard or whiteboard, something like that. Maybe look at the video. It's not about rock, paper, scissors. It's something more advanced. But look at that to get some idea. So later on, when you go for a programming interview, that would be something your boss will expect you to be able to explain complicated ideas manually like pretty much like what I usually do on the iPad. If you, just for your interest, if you want to do some like a mock-up interviews like that, come to my office hour. I'll give you some challenging problems to try, okay? No penalty if you did it wrong, all right? Just come, just for your interest. Okay, now, any more questions before I move on to the course? Okay, good. Okay, what is this course about? Okay, very briefly, we want to solve problems, of course, and now I make it very general. So first of all, we want to use object orientation, which we cover quite a bit in 1022. We're going to review that in the first week, and I want you to pay attention to architecture over here. Architecture means structure. The structure you learned about in 1022 was you might have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 classes where you might declare an attribute of reference type or an array of reference types, right? That's pretty much what you learned in 1022. Now, when I say architecture, it means something even more than that. So we're going to cover the more advanced topics called inheritance, in which case you got a more sophisticated ideas to learn. Okay, I just want to mention that quickly. Object orientation and procedural programming. So what you learned back in 1022 are the basics. If statements, just give me one moment. If statements, you got loops, you got 2-dimensional array, and those will not be covered again in 1022. The thing that we will cover as new topics will be something called recursion. But if you look at the syllabus, it's going to happen a little bit later in the semester. So I would say, I'm going to assume that if you're not comfortable with if statements, loops, 2-dimensional array, nested loop, you will study the background studies, right, in the week number 1. So we just don't have time to cover that, to repeat. Okay, now, whenever you got any solutions, you want to express that computationally in Java for this course, okay? So whatever you learned, by studying the long series of tutorial videos, especially for lab number 5, I can tell you that that's worth doing, okay? We'll get to that. Okay, one more thing to mention before I start the lecture. So if you need any accommodation, if you don't feel comfortable approaching me after class, that's okay. Just send me an email, and then or just approach me in the office hour, any kind of accommodation, okay? Yes, I tell you what, to be more precise today, if you really got questions for me, I can see you between 4 and 5, but I need to leave a little bit earlier today at 5. But starting from tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 4 to 6 p.m., okay? Yeah. Or if you really cannot make it, I'll see you in the lab session next week. Okay, no questions? And then I will, sorry, again, I ran over time. So I will start the course materials, okay? If no questions, I will start. Okay, now I would say for week number 1, the main goal is to review classes and objects, okay? When I say review, that means we kind of assume you know them already, okay? And again, for those of you who actually took 1022 with me, I would say your efforts on studying these enormous amount of slides is worthwhile because this set of slides here will be very similar to what you did before. Okay, so I would say, I cannot go over really everything here. What I would do is I will try to incorporate them with a little bit Eclipse to show you how you're supposed to use Eclipse. And I will also go over some challenging example maybe on Monday next week. But for today, I want to review some basic stuff to see how much time we have. Okay. Okay, now let's see over here. Let me just, okay, let me just see that. Maybe I should say view and full screen mode. By the way, guys, you know what? There's something I realized. Now I can record the video in high definition. Yeah, I'm not sure how much that will engage you more to the course, but hopefully that will be a little bit marginal effects, right? I just found that yesterday. There was a little tiny setup I got to do. I forgot. Anyway, it should be high definition when I upload the video today. Okay, now, let me just say again, separation of concern. Okay, again, let's draw a final connection between 1022 and what we're going to do now, okay? In 1022, we got the model components. So that's everything that matters for 2030. So you got 1 or more Java classes. For example, remember in your lab number 1 in 1022. So for those of you who actually are really bothered by me keep mentioning reference to previous 1022, I only do that for the first week. Okay, so starting from the second week, it's going to be completely new materials. Okay, okay, so for lab number 1 in 1022, we did a BMI calculator, remember? In which case, the model class is just one class, person. However, when we got to lab number 5, we actually got the tutorial that we got for you. It actually involves 3 classes: students, student management system, and course records. So 3. So even 3 is quite a small number, but you can see the way classes interact with each other is already get a little bit more complicated, much more complicated than one class. When you get to 3311, you actually have to deal with hundreds of classes, right? It's not that you have to implement 100 classes, but you have to know how to work with people's code. But you'll get there. Okay, and in 1022, we actually got some other Java classes that would manipulate the model classes, right? Remember, we got controller, but you don't have to worry about controller anymore in this course. However, of course, in the controller, you visualize the effects on the tablets. As I said, there's no more tablets. This is the thing I would like you to maybe revisit only in week 1, okay? Because in week 2, we're going to show you a better way to do it, which is about a tester with the main method, which I will still do in today's demo. It's still useful to have. Okay, and the way we see the effect is not really by building the app. It's much easier. You simply just execute a class, execute the main method, it will display something on the console for you. It's much faster, much more effective for you to do testing and debugging. However, there's still a much better way to do it, which is JUnits. We'll do that. Okay, now, in Java in general, we may define more than one classes. You can define as many classes as you like, okay? And they don't have to be completely isolated from each other. Whenever you declare an attribute of the type of another class, you're making some connection over there, right? For example, let's say in the student class, I have an array of course records. In this case, I'm making a connection to the course record class, right? Example like that. Oh, one more thing I forgot. So there is a hyperlink over here. If you click on that, let me just say aloud, you will see that page over here, okay? That shouldn't be too strange to you if you took 1022 with me. Let me say this. This tutorial series, if you think you are very comfortable with all the concept over there, you don't have to worry. It's completely optional. However, for those of you who didn't take 1022 with me, I would suggest maybe you just spend some time in the first week when you are not so busy with other courses yet. It's going to be worth your time. Basically, this tutorial series walk you through how you can develop from scratch 3 classes with a reasonable complexity using classes, objects, method calls, tester, etc. It will be a very nice review for you. Okay, I would say this is optional for those of you who took 1022 with me, but you haven't. I would suggest you have a look at that. Okay, just one thing to note. In the very beginning, and also the IDE that's used over here is Android Studio, but it's quite straightforward to move that to Eclipse. Okay, just some imperfection there. I just don't want to record the tutorial videos again. That's not, maybe I should do that next year, but maybe not this year. Okay, let me go back to the slides over here. Okay. Okay, object-oriented programming in Java. Okay, let me just mention a little bit more details. Okay, what's really, okay, you know what? Hopefully you didn't see that. Okay, who can tell me what's the difference between classes and objects? Just tell me how you think. I'll just take one answer and then I'll comment on that and then I'll move on, rather than me giving you some answer right away. Yes, classes versus objects. Okay, you can make, I like the answer. So basically you said that objects can be created from classes. Good. So put it another way, classes are more like templates for which you define what things should happen in general. Let's say person can be a template. Every person has an age, has a name, has a gender, has many other attributes. However, you may have Jonathan as an instance of the person, Jackie as an instance of the person, right? Right? Things like that. I will review that. And also objects will be used to create or instantiate the classes, okay? So now, and then at the runtime, what we really want to do, that's something I want you, maybe it didn't make much sense when you were back in 1022. Maybe think about this. When we were trying to do your lab number 5, when we were trying to do the student management system example, somehow the way we define the classes, the way we define the attributes, the way we define the methods, what we are really trying to do is we are trying to mimic the way real world really works, right? Because a student can add a course, and a course record can be set for its letter grade, etc. So that's really the nice thing about object-oriented programming. Okay, I want you to keep thinking about how we can really implement the interactions in the real world in Java. Right? That's really something I want you to appreciate. Okay. Okay, so now object orientation. So again, that's kind of the three-step phase I would like to go over very quickly. Okay, there's a diagram. I'll just go through that in iPad in just one moment. And if you really want to know more about object orientation, you can click on this link. There's another tutorial video to walk you through some basic ideas about object orientation. Okay, I'll skip that part just for now. Okay, so now let me just say that on the iPad quickly. I hope Apple Pencil is connected. I hope. Good. Okay, so now what I want you to really realize is keep thinking about this kind of process throughout the semester. The first step is we want to observe. What does that mean to observe? Observe means you want to somehow see how real entities work, how a person works, how the bank account works, how the transaction should be deposited or withdrawn, right? Things like that. Okay, let's say in the real entity we got two persons, Jim and Jonathan, right? So we can see that Jim is 45 years old. He's maybe 80 kilograms heavy. So that's kind of the attribute we can observe from real entities. But now, how do we translate that into something that we can manipulate computationally? So you got to translate that into Java, okay? Now, I want you to, first of all, know that there is a critical difference between compile time and runtime. Anybody want to try to tell me what's the difference between compile time and runtime? Running, yeah, good, very good. So I will actually illustrate to you in Eclipse. Basically, whenever you're typing on your keyboard, that's compile time. You're making your Java classes. As soon as your Java program is compiled, that means ready for execution. You will say, run this as a Java application, run it. Whatever you see on the console, that's actually an outcome from the runtime. Okay, that's a very quick abbreviation. Okay, compile time. Basically, we have to, for example, you can see for Jim and Jonathan, what we are doing is, based on our observation, we're going to create a class called person, a template, which means Jim is going to be instantiated from the person class. Jonathan is also going to be instantiated from the person class. And then for now, we simply say there are three attributes, name, weight, and heights. Okay, just as an example. You can also extrapolate the same analogy for maybe points over here. Okay, I'll just ignore that part. Okay, one more thing. What's really the advantage of defining? You can see when you go from here to here, what you're doing is, based on your observation, you create classes. In 1022, you were actually spoiled because every time in the labs, I actually told you what the classes should be, right? So you don't really have to create classes yourself. In 2030, well, I would say I will try to give you a little bit more exercise about what classes you really create, maybe as an exercise. But the real chance of practicing this will be maybe in 2011 and 3311, when you actually go upper year. But I want to tell you that when you go from observation into the Java classes declaration, that's a very critical step. That's really something hard to teach, but I would say it's mainly based on experience. Okay, but we'll try to do more exercises in this course. Finally, once you define the template for person, what we can do is we can instantiate one person called Jim, another person called Jonathan, just different instances of the same class. So what does that mean? Let me just highlight something for you. You can see that in the template over there, we have an attribute called name. So that means at the runtime, every person object has an attribute called name. However, the attribute values for each instance may be different. Like everybody has a different name, right? So now in this case, you can see for Jim, this object over here, the name value is Jim. And for this object over here, the name is Jonathan. So they have both objects of type person, they have the same attributes, but the values for the attribute are different. Okay, that's kind of the thing I want you to really see. But I will try to see that in Eclipse as well. Okay, it's a very nice, very quick discussion about this kind of process here. Hopefully you can just review this process over and over, try to see how that will apply to your study of Java in this course. Okay, let me go back there, and then let's see. We'll do some Eclipse illustration in just a moment. For those of you who got a laptop, just get ready. Okay, we'll get there. Okay, observe, model, and also execute. Okay, object-oriented programming. So we got entities. You can think about entities as just like objects. That's something you want to observe. Okay, this slide is very easy. Just different entities got different attributes, right? I'll do Eclipse example in the next slides. So attributes and behavior. So you want this. That's why I said back in 1022, right? Let me just give you. I'll write it down. So when you try to observe in this stage over here, you want to identify the critical nouns or verbs. Okay? So usually, I'll give you an example in just a moment in the later slides. Sometimes some of the critical nouns will be turned into either class name or attribute names. And the critical verbs is going to be turned into method. And remember, how many kinds of methods do we have in Java? I called my students from 1022 to answer me. Don't disappoint me. Make me proud. Should I just point to someone? Try. You remember? How many kinds of methods do we have? And constructor. Well, I'm proud of you. Thank you. So we got accessor, we got mutator, we got constructor. I'll talk about the difference in just a moment. Okay, so just remember, these are the only three kinds of methods you can define. Okay, accessor, mutator, and constructor. They got different purposes. Okay, and then I'll talk about what kind of method. It can be accessor, it can be mutator, and it can be constructor. You know what, since I'm writing this out, why don't I just mention briefly about their purpose very quickly. Okay, I tell you what, the easiest one is constructor. Construct something. Construct a new objects, right? That's easy. Okay, what about accessor? Accessor means you want to get access to something. Okay, so that means you want to return some information, return. No action required, just return something. Now, mutator actually comes from the verb mutate, right? Hopefully you know about this word. That means change something. Okay, so when it's a mutator, that means you want to change the values of attributes of some. So here I'm going to mention some keywords over here for you. Context objects. Okay, context object is very important. When you talk about object orientation, it's always about context. Yes?
Are mutators always void?
Yes. Yeah, that's more about how you implement that. Yes, mutator is always void. And you can think about, how about, let me put it a little bit better for you. You can think about constructor does not have a return type. Okay? Mutator and accessor, they both have return type. It's just that for mutator, the return type is void. Doesn't return anything. Yeah.
What if you get two values and you mix them together and you get something new? What would that be?
It's a very good question. Basically, the question is, what if you got a method there? Let me just let me try to answer this just in words. I'll try to demonstrate in a bit later. Let's say you have a person class. You have a method called get BMI, which means based on the person's weight and height, we want to do some computation according to some formula. This is supposed to be an accessor, which means if I want to get somebody's BMI, I do not want to modify their current weight and height just yet. I just want to get the information according to their current measures. Okay? So now, what if in the get BMI method there, what if I also try to change the weight and height of the person? This is totally allowed in Java. Totally allowed. Your code will still compile, and things might still execute without any problem. How about I would say, this kind of mix is not a good practice because you really want to have a very clear separation between accessor and mutator. Okay, I'll try to get more information to you, but the short answer is, yes, you can do it in Java. You'll be a mix. So you wouldn't call them accessor or mutator purely, but I would say try to avoid. Yeah. Any other questions about this? Okay. Okay, let's go back there. Okay, solve problems programmatically by, when I say classifying, that means declare classes. I'll do demo maybe in the next slides. And then you try to manipulate the data. When I say manipulate, that means you either want to get some information out of it or you want to change it. Okay, so we'll see demo. Okay, and each entity has specific values, and then, okay. So now, let's do Eclipse. Okay, so now could you please just read it for me, even though you have read it before, most of you. Just read it very quickly. This might be something you were given just as a problem, right? Very simple problem. So now we can see that we got many nouns over there, but it turns out there's going to be only one word we're going to use to create a class out of this paragraph. Person, good, okay? Well, of course, you're going to ask me, how do you know? Well, I know because I made the slides, right? But the thing is, in general, if you're given a description like this, it may not be just one paragraph. It might be maybe pages of document you have to read through and make a decision. I would say in general, to really figure out exactly how many classes you want to get from certain description is completely up to your judgment as a software developer. I would say you don't have to worry too much at this level for 2030. You may have to practice more in 3311, okay? Not in 2030. Okay, so what we will do is we're gonna create a person class, and then you can see that attributes and behavior, so that can constitute personhood, and person ages and grown on their heights and weights, right? So you can see the heights and weights could be a nice candidates for attributes. You wouldn't create a class called weights. You wouldn't create a class called height, right? Okay, that's one example here. And then I will do the Eclipse right away. So we got attributes, we got behavior over here. So you can see somehow this verb over here, ages, gets turned into get older. So now, here's a judgment call for you. Should get older an accessor or mutator? Why would you think that should be a mutator? You change the age of the whatever person you're talking about, right? You're not really trying to get something. What about gain weight? That's similar, right? You change the weights. But what about get BMI? In that case, intuitively, you're only trying to get information based on calculating weight divided by height square, right? So you don't have to change them. Okay, it's just a simple illustration. Now, let's do a little bit Eclipse. Okay, I will show you the most important stuff that you should know, so that if I give you any in-class exercises, you can do them in Eclipse. So if you haven't installed the Eclipse, you can find the instruction I sent to you. Oh, by the way, so everybody received the Moodle announcement I sent to you, right? Okay, so if you haven't, please talk to me. That means somehow you're not subscribed to the Moodle, which is worrying, okay? Okay, so now let me just show you what you can do. You can launch the Eclipse, but before you do that, I would suggest choose somewhere on your computer as a workspace for you. They have some default workspace, maybe document/Eclipse, something like workspace. But for example, for my case, I'm gonna put my workspace 2030 as an empty folder. It's empty on my desktop. You can choose it somewhere, okay? And now when you first launch Eclipse, it's going to ask you to browse a workspace. So I browse to exactly the 2030 I just created on the desktop, right? For your case, it can be other path. And then I'm gonna say launch, okay? And let's see what happened. What I would do is I'll try to create a person class, I'll create a tester, and then I'll try to illustrate several critical things that should be the basics, but I think that's worth mentioning again. And then that might be it for today. But maybe on Monday, what I will do is I will try to give you a little bit more challenging exercises to go over, okay? But the bottom line is, I don't think, to be honest, I can go over all the slides about classes and objects. I give you everything there, so you really should really go over them. If you really got questions, please talk to me, okay? Yeah. Okay, so the first time you actually see this welcome page over here, so there are two things you can do. You can either say close the welcome. I don't think it will show again. Or you may have to actually uncheck this box. Okay, it's kind of subtle. Or you can simply just go to Workbench. Okay, just click on that. Okay, I would say the way it works is kind of similar to Android Studio, but since we have no tablet concern, so in some ways easier to operate with. Okay, So now this is how you should organize your Java projects. We'll talk about more about project structure next time. So every workspace you have has a number of Java projects. Let's create a project right away. And then I can say File, New, Java Projects. Okay. Okay, let's give a name. And the naming convention should be how you define a class, right? Capitalized words. So I can say, you can either say example1, okay, that's not a good name. What about person? Okay, that's just a person. Okay. And then I would, let's say person example. That may be a little bit better. Because there will be another class called person. I don't want to clash. It's okay to clash, but it's not good. Okay, you don't have to worry about anything else, and just say finish. As soon as we are done with this, I want you to look at over here. If you expand this, you can see it's much easier than it was on Android Studio, right? But at the same time, it's more challenging because now you are not distracted anymore by any of the generated code in Android Studio. You have to focus purely on Java, okay? You will see there's a folder here called source, completely empty. At the same time, I want you to go to the desktop, the workspace again. You will see that now we do have a person example project, right? That's a project folder. Okay, over here, if I just expand it, I want you to see the correspondence here. Expand person example, you will see a folder called bin, another folder called source. You don't have to worry about the bin folder. It simply stores the bytecode for Java, which you never have to touch. Okay, focus on the source. Currently just empty. Okay, I'll go back, and now what I want to do is I want to create, right-click on the source and say new, and then class. Okay, let's not worry about packages today. Okay, we can worry about packages later. Packages are simply like subfolders, okay, like in your computer. Okay, I want to create a new class, and then let me call that person. Okay, person. And you can see that it's simply, because you can see default package here. Default package simply means the person class is not contained in any subfolder of your project. So that's default, okay? You don't have to touch it. Okay, and person class, would that be too small? Is that okay? Should I make it larger? Okay, maybe it's nice showing, right? If you want to make your font larger, go to Eclipse and go to Preferences. And you can see the filter text box over here, just type font. And you will see appearances, colors, and font. So there are two places you have to adjust. First, go under Java, and then you will see the Java editor text. And then let me do 24. That'll be much more comfortable. That's one place. That's about the editor you have, right? There's another place I would like you to change as well. Under debug, and go for console fonts. So this is for any output that's produced to the console. We want the font to be reasonable as well. Okay, you can choose 24 as well. Okay, and then we can say apply and close. Okay, better? Okay, good. Okay, I'll go to the person class in just one moment. Let's create one more class, a tester. Okay, so now let's, you can right-click on source, and then say new class. Let's say we got person tester. And now, before you say finish, I want you to show you one option which can save you some typing. You can see that over here, which method stops would you like to create? You want to check this case for the main method. There should be only one single main method in your projects, typically, at least for 2030. Okay? So now you're saying that I want to include a main method here, which means that would be the entry point of execution for me to test. Okay? Okay, choose that, and then you will say finish. On the other hand, the person class does not need to have a main method. Okay, like that. Okay, this means we're going to develop some executable. If you're not very fast in typing, don't worry. I'm going to make the source code available to you. So just focus on understanding what I'm doing here. Develop some executable use cases. Use cases for person, which means we're going to create objects from person class. Okay, let me go back to person here. So now I'm back to, let me just make some comments over here. We will do better documentation for your classes. I'll show you how you can do Java doc, but it'll be week 2. Don't worry about it for week 1. a template for creating person objects. Okay, it's a template. So now, again, in Java, you can interleave the declarations between attributes and methods. But I would say if you really want to keep it maybe straightforward to you, at least for myself, I like to declare all the attributes and then all the methods. Okay, let's try. But you can interleave, that's okay. It doesn't bother me. All right, let's say we can say attributes. Okay, let's just see what we had before from the slides. You know what? For now, I can close this guy here. Okay, attribute age, weight, and height. Age, weight, and heights. And if you simply do this, of course, you wouldn't compile. Every variable or attribute deserves a type in Java, right? For age, now it's a judgment call, right? What should that be? Integer, double, string? Why shouldn't that be double? Why shouldn't that be double? Yes?
You don't have the ages with the decimal.
Yeah, when I say I'm 3.5 years old, doesn't make sense, right? Okay, good. Okay, I'm just checking. Okay, and then weights, that can be, right? Double, okay. And now, guys, I want to do a little bit, I want to reserve a little bit more things which I will talk about encapsulation, okay? But I'm just mentioning the word here, but I will give a proper lecture on this, or at least make a tutorial video for you to follow. So now, here's the thing. When I say weight and height, it's not very clear about what do you mean by weights and heights. Weights can be kilograms, can be pounds. Heights can be meters, or it can be inches, right? But now I'm not so clear about it. Let's just make the assumption just for this demo here. I'll show you something you should really do for your application later. Okay, let's say assume in kilos. And let's say assume in meters. For example, you would say 1.7, right? For 170 centimeters, right? Okay, so these are the attributes and the person tester. Okay, there's one thing I want to illustrate to you, which I didn't mention in 1022. Yes, questions?
I think instead of the reason why we're going to use, the reason we're using double for age is because we can't have the decimal.
Yeah, that's exactly the point, yes. Mm-hmm.
We know we do, but it doesn't really affect our code.
It's a very good question. I think it's more about the maintainability of your code. Even though programmatically, if you declare your age to be double, it might still work because let's say this. I can say, let me just try to say this in Word. If you say double D is assigned to 3, that will work, right? Because 3 integer can be interpreted as a double. But the thing is, you're not really being consistent about the notation. Because when you say something is expected to be a double, but you never give a double value, like a decimal point value to there. So you're having some inconsistency there. So overall, your project will get a little bit more out of sync from the original requirements. So I would say try to be as close to what really happens in the real world as possible. Okay? Another example, what about student number? Oh, not student, this is a good example. Let's say, let me ask you this. I'll put it on the Eclipse. Question for you. What should be the height if we also got, let's say person is actually your student person, right? What should be the types of these attributes? Okay, first of all, what about, let's simple one, student ID. Okay, integer, why do you think integer will work? Yeah, that's true. You don't need precision there. You don't need decimal point. And also, you know that for our case, for York students, your student number is purely just digits, right? There's no character. Any other answer? Yes?
So because integers are 32-bit, it's going to overflow if you try to put 9 digits.
That's another good point. Okay, so basically what Jordan was trying to say was, just very briefly.
Yeah.
What was that? Okay. Okay, just very quickly. So now let's say student number. Okay, so now This is nobody's student number, right? Oh, sorry. My bad. Okay, so now let's say this is a student number. I think that can be an integer value, right? But let's say, it can be, right? I believe. Yeah, let's say if that's fine, right? If I actually try to expand that with many more digits over here, let's say later on, eventually, integer would not be good enough to store the information. It's simply not big enough. Oh, I know. But I mean, for now, it's okay, right? So that means maybe you have some potential concern that integer may not be a good choice, right? I'm not saying it wouldn't work for now, but may not be working eventually. Okay? So now, so now in this case, string could be a better choice. And string can give you more flexibility where if you, let's say, want to have, let's say, maybe sometimes there may be some character in your student number, maybe, right? So you can also include it as a string, okay? Okay, so now let's go back there. Okay, now student ID, we know that it's better to be string. Now, what about your York passport? I hope that's an easier choice to make, right? York passport. Cannot be an integer, right? Cannot be a double. Well, because you might get an, you just cannot store a string into an integer or double. Okay, it's a string. I just heard that you can have an array of character if you like. But you wouldn't normally do that, but that's okay. Yeah, well, whatever. Okay, and also I believe you got an EECS account already, right? EECS. For example, you might get CS, maybe CS, something like that. That can be also one example. So that should also be a string. Okay, so I'm just saying the type of the attributes are really a judgment call for you. Think about what's really the best way to decide. Always think about examples and see what's the best types to accommodate the examples. Okay? Okay, let's go on. Okay. Okay, let's now at least do some constructor over there. Okay, one thing to mention. Now, something I didn't mention in 1022. Let's say over here, there's no constructor, right? No constructor here has been defined. However, Java has a default constructor for you. Okay? Default in the sense that you will only create an object, but all the attribute values will be default values, which means for integer, it will be 0, double it will be 0.0, and double will be 0.0. And the default constructor will go away as soon as you define your own constructor. I'll illustrate that to you. Okay? So now so now you can see that so far no constructor have been defined. So the default constructor is available. Okay, let's illustrate that. Person tester here. And let's say person over there. Okay, by the way, you can always have the code completion ability in Eclipse. So you can type something as a per and then control space. It can help you do some code completion. So we can choose person over here. Jin is assigned to new person. Okay, you can see that this compiles. You can see we are calling the constructor in the person class, even though there is no explicit declaration for that. That's something to note. Okay, it is allowed when there's no constructor defined. Okay. Okay. So now let's go back there and then person tester here. So now let's try to run this in just a moment. Okay. You know what I would do is you can say system.out.println line. What I want to do is I want to say gym.h, gym.weights, gym.heights. Okay, I want to do the printouts over here. You can see everything I do here, pretty much like what you did in Android Studio for tester. Nothing new for you to learn over here. Okay, so another thing I want to illustrate briefly, which is about using the debugger in Eclipse. Hopefully that can work on my computer today. If it doesn't work, I will make sure it works on Monday so I can illustrate. But let's try. So in Android Studio, as I said before, you can set up the breakpoints for you to execute the code. Breakpoint simply means as soon as I start executing the code, I want to pause at that particular point so that I can examine the values for the various attributes and see if things might work. to my expectation. Okay, but now before I do that, let me just execute the code. You can see up to now is compile time. Up to now, what I would do is go to Project Explorer. One more thing to show you that's really important. If you find that you couldn't find a Package Explorer, or you want to show more views, you should always go to Window and Show View over here. So here we got console, which will be the output for our tester. And also we got something called outline. If you choose outline over here, outline simply shows you the structure of your current class, which is also very useful. Okay, you can just drag and drop the outline maybe to, let me try to use, you can drag and drop outline to maybe together with Project Explorer, Package Explorer here. Okay, I couldn't do that now, but anyway, the outline over here shows you the structure of the code. That's also something useful when you develop your lab solutions or project. Okay, okay. Now how do we execute a class? So now we want to go to runtime. Given that everything compiles, so now we can execute it. So what I would do is go to the person tester, which has the main method. Right-click on the class, and you want to say run as Java application over here. Okay? If you say that, it's going to print out something over here for you, right? 0, 0.0, and 0.0. 0 correspond to the age, 0.0 correspond to weights, and the second 0.0 correspond to the heights, right? So far, so good. Let's try to see. I would like to more see from the debugger's point of view. How do I see that? Let me try. Hopefully debugger works. What I can do is I want to say, I want to put maybe right after line number 6, I want the execution to pause over there. So you can see that there's a blue line over here, right? That's the place where you can put a breakpoint. I simply double click on line number 7 over there. So you can see there's a blue bullet point over there, right? That means next time when I try to debug, it's going to pause over there. Okay? Let's try that. So now the one way to debug would be, so now we're going to say right click. Now rather than saying run as Java application, if you simply say run, it's still going to execute without the breakpoints, without pausing at the breakpoint. You want to say debug as Java application. That's what you want to say. Okay? So you say debug as Java application. Okay, so now let's say remember my decision over here and then say switch. So you will switch to the debugger's perspective. So now you can see, don't worry about this one here, okay? Don't worry about it, okay? So now you can see that the execution point is now, there's an error over here. It pauses at line number 7, which means we pause right after executing line number 6, which was to create the objects over there of type person. Okay. Now let's try to visualize what has been done in line number 6. Okay, it's the basics I wish to review. Okay, look at line number 6 over there, and now we're gonna do some code illustration over here. Okay, I would like to mention this again. Okay, so now when I say person over here, Jim is assigned to new person. Okay, default constructor. Default constructor simply means it does nothing. Okay, everything will be left as default values. Okay, so that means, remember the way you should understand this is break this into 3 parts. Part 1, and then part 2, and then part 3. Okay, 3 parts. Let's understand one by one for the very basic example. And then for other more complicated constructor will be the same way to visualize. Okay, now let's think about what does the green part really means. That means we are really creating, let's imagine that, let's say this is your computer memory. You don't have to understand hardware too much, at least imagine that's a computer memory. It's going to be a sequence of bytes of information. Somewhere in the memory, and then maybe with a starting address in binary number, let's say 001011, I made it up, okay? And over there, we actually allocate a space for creating a new person objects over there. So now, what should be the content for the person objects? The content should be according to how you define the templates. which is in the class over here. If you go back to the class, there should be 3 attributes, age, weights, and heights, right? So these will be the 3. Okay, let's put them back. So now let me just make some a little bit more annotation here. So there is a person type object over there, and there is an age, there is a weights, and there is an heights. Okay, like that. And then for age, it's by default, everything will be default values, right, for the default constructor. Age 0, weight 0.0, and height 0.0. That's the green part. Just allocate somewhere in the memory, create the objects. Okay? Now, what about the orange part? The orange part is we are trying to declare a variable called Jim. The type is a reference type called person. So what does Jim really store? What does Jim store? The address, exactly, okay? It's a very common confusion over here. You might be thinking that Jim is going to store this entire object over here, including age, weight, and height. No, that's not the case, okay? What it stores is something indirect. What it does is, you can think about Jim is more like a placeholder over here. And then the type is gonna be some address. In that case, I will put 001011 over here after this assignment here. So I'm doing the orange and blue together, okay? When I do the orange part, I'm saying that Jim is gonna be a placeholder for some address. By default, it will be null. But since I'm doing this assignment over here, which means I'm going to copy this address of the object I just created into over here, okay? That's it. So this is more or less what's happening at the runtime. However, this is not really conceptual enough. Remember I said before, you want to think more abstractly. So this is more like a hardware-oriented illustration. I would like to show you the way I like to visualize it, and that will help you trace the program much more effectively, especially when I talk about aliasing on Monday, okay? So this is more like a hardware-oriented diagram over here. So I would like to draw in this way. For the orange part, I simply just create a new person object over there, and we know that each person has 3 attributes, age, weights, and heights. 0, 0.0, 0.0 over here, right? And then I'm gonna have Jim over here. See you guys next time. Oh, am I running over time? I should be okay, right? By the way, I should go, and I think I will go until 2:20 each time, okay? But you know, it doesn't bother me. If you really got a class to catch, just leave, that's okay. That's fine. I'm totally okay for that. Okay, so now, and then for the assignment over here, I simply say Jim, rather than pointing to this, rather than storing the whole object, is going to point to this person object here. That's how I would draw it. Okay, so always remember this is how you connect the variable and the object together. Okay, so now I want you to convince yourself for this. This might be the only example I will show you the hardware and the conceptual view over here. Make sure you understand how this is going to work. Okay, because you need this technique on the right hand side to trace your program. Okay, and I want to do just one more thing. Okay, one more thing. Actually, we got 5 minutes, 7 minutes. We should do more. All right. Okay, so now I want to illustrate to you one thing here. You can see that currently the person tester over here is using this default constructor. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Remember our execution pause over here at line number 7. There's something I want you to see over here. So there are 2 panels I would like to show you, very important. You can see, first of all, the variables panel over here. If you don't see the variables panel in your computer, easy. Go to Window and Show View and go to Variables. That's how you show it. Okay? If you don't see it, it should be there by default in the debugger view. Okay, now you will see that there's a Jim over here. And now if you just click on Jim, it shows you something like this. Okay? Person at 3B6EB2EC. What's that? Address. Exactly. Okay? So that means by default, it doesn't really show you the contents of the objects. So that means Jim stores the address only. Okay? That's really important to note. And then if you expand the gym object over here, you will see that it shows exactly the correspondence to the diagram over here with age, weight, and height. So that's why you got age, weight, and height over here with the values over here. Okay, one more thing to show you. There's another thing that will also help you debug. If you go to another panel here called expressions, basically, you can put any expressions over here that will actually make sense at this line over here in line number 7. Because in line number 7, we already declare a variable called gym. That means we can query about what's the status for the gym, for this variable here. For example, add new expression here, I can say gym.age, 0. Let me do something more interesting, which may not be useful, but interesting. I can even say gym.age plus 3. You give me 3, right? I can also do something like gym.age, gym.weights divided by gym.heights multiply gym.height. Before I hit enter, what's going to happen? Actually, it should be undefined. It should be crashing, right? Because in this case, weight and height, they are actually just 0. But that's okay. You can still try. Okay? Just give it a try. My point is, when you actually stop at the debugger over there, you want to really make use of the variables and also the expressions. These will be your friends during the lab test. Okay? Okay, if you do that, you simply say NaN, not a number. Okay? So far, so good. Okay, I want to show you one more thing. Okay? We still got 4 minutes, which is good. Okay, so now, let me show you one thing. So now, I want to make a comment here. As soon as we add a user-defined constructor, the default constructor is undefined, i.e., cannot be used anymore. Okay, I will illustrate this to you. Let's say I want to define a constructor over here. What I would say is person, the same name as a class, and let's say integer weights, double weights and double heights. I can say this dot weights, I'll talk about this in the beginning of the next lecture, is equal to weights, and this dot heights is assigned to heights over here. Okay, you can see that person class compiles. However, what happens? The person tester does not compile, which means the default constructor, which used to exist just because there was no constructor there, it's not the case anymore because we just added in. So that's something, please notice that. That's something I didn't mention in 1022, but you should know that now. Okay, what should we do? Easy, just apply. Okay, and one more thing to tell you. Now, since you're second year, please try to read the error messages from Eclipse, right? I may not be around you at any moments, but just try to read the error message. And try to read it together. If you move your mouse over the red underline, it will simply say something like that. Okay, remove it. Let's see what the error message is. The constructor person with no arguments is undefined. Okay, that means the default constructor is not there anymore. What should we do? Use the constructor we just defined. So now maybe gym, let's say, for example, 80 kilograms and 1.89, let's say. So now let's try to run the debugger again. Let's see what happened. You can also, once you execute the debugger for once already, you can just click on the bug button here. Click on that. It's going to stop at the same point over there. Okay, you got to click on the debugger perspective over here. Debug. You know what? Let me just try once more. Somehow, okay, this is how you can stop it. And then let me go back to the package explorer over there. So let me show you another route. Run debug as Java application. Let's try that. Okay, do I see the person tester over here? Okay, I want to see the variables. You can see in this case, I don't have the variables. Let me try window and show view and go to variables. Okay, there we go. That's how we bring it back. Okay, the variables over here. Okay, you got to play with the tool a little bit. Okay. Okay, just will show you one more. 1 minute, right? Anyway, play with this example over here. I'll try to continue from here to give you more complete view. One more thing to mention, okay? Just give me 30 seconds. So now, what should you do over the weekend? Go over the slides for class and object. I'm going to make it available. It's long, but many of the concepts should be just review. I'll try to cover more challenging exercises on Monday, and that'll be it for the review. Okay? I'll see you next week.